Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Scott DeGrossier from Wicked Reports. Wicked Reports is a powerful e-commerce and omni-channel marketing attribution platform purposely built for digital agencies and media buyers. There are some brands that will also use Wicked Reports directly to get better insights into where their marketing spend is driving the best ROI. We had a fantastic conversation about the complexities of modern marketing attribution in a privacy first world. I think you're going to learn a ton. Enjoy. This is the eCommerce Edge podcast. Host Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Scott DeGrossier from Wicked Reports, the podcast. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Jason. I know you moderated a panel recently that I was on. I was impressed with your skills. I said, that's a podcast voice, and lo and behold, you had one. So
Well done. Thank you very much. No, we had a fantastic conversation. That episode, which Chris organized, I think that's probably going to come out sometime in the next couple of weeks. And we did. We had a fantastic panel about marketing, about attribution, about tracking, about the evolution of privacy. That thing, I think, is going to be an absolute cracker of an episode. But yeah, there was a lot of us on the panel. I think there was about 6 of us in total. And so I don't think you necessarily got the fair airing of time that you potentially deserved, given your background and your experience in the space. And so I feel like this is hopefully going to rectify that, and we'll have a chance to have a deep conversation. But before we get into attribution and Wicked Reports and a few other things, why don't you tell us how you even came to be in this space? Now, obviously, you come from a data analysis background. You worked at Motorola. You've got a database background. So, you clearly have an analytical mind to begin with, but maybe how did you then evolve that into a focus on retail, helping retailers, helping e-commerce merchants with data analytics, attribution, and then building software ultimately?
sure. Technically been using data for prediction purposes for literally, I'm 52, for 40 years, which is mind blowing. Because when I was 12, my parents were quite annoyed by this, but I was like using all the horse track racing programs to try to develop systems to predict which horse was going to win so I could then bet and try and win. But I like the idea of the scoring, and I just have loved using data to score results prediction, which is a really strange thing, I guess, to say out loud, but I've been into it forever. I've just always loved it. And so then when fantasy sports came around and you could bid on your players for your stats for your team, way into that, ahead of the curve. And so I've always been, and then I was a day trader using stats to trade my own money back. That was like 25 years ago, before you had all these on-demand systems. So I had a special phone that would download the stock prices. It would take 5 hours to download them, then run the systems on these crappy computers, and then frantically have to search all the symbols and then call in the trades. So I've been doing this type of stuff for a while. So then my friend Mark from Get Maine Lobster had reached out. This was in 2012 or 13, saying, hey, Facebook sucks for lobster. That's what he said. And I was like, what do you mean? He sold lobsters online, either frozen or fresh. And he had spent $4,000, which was his whole budget at the time. And he only made one sale. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do Facebook. Like, there's got to be more. Are you sure?
Yeah.
You're going to just give up on the channel. And it turned out he had a tracking issue, and he had a delayed conversion time thing, and lifetime value versus cost to acquire the customer. All those things came into play, which we'll get into as we talk. But at its basic genesis, yeah, I got roped in because a friend was having trouble selling stuff online, and he thought I might be able to find some software for him. And it turned into, I created some software, and I am still.
Nearly 9 years later, and you're based in Massachusetts near Boston. And yeah, I think what's interesting about this is that it feels like there's an absolute all out war on attribution now. It feels like that's where the world is headed. It got kicked off by Google, and with the impending death of third party cookies, it then got escalated with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. And then slowly after that blow up happened, Facebook removed so many targeting options for their ads, both demographic and firmographic options from their ads, And then brands started to realize, hey, actually, we should be sending cohorts to Facebook anyway, in terms of our target customers that are working well for us so that they can create lookalikes off the back of that so that we don't blindly trust Facebook's targeting, which is always going to work in its favor versus the merchant's favor. And then I guess some of the latest escalations come from the Apple camp, and with all the iOS changes and privacy clampdowns and browser-based clampdowns and privacy tools like what customers and consumers can use now to hide their digital tracks online, it definitely feels like there's a war on attribution. Would you tend to agree with that?
I would tend to agree. It's never a dull quarter. Every quarter, there's some new technicality or challenge or gory detail that has us. We're always trying to think a couple years ahead. So we had thought about mitigations if they did not allow us to put anything on a link, meaning link decoration is the term, but UTMs, IDs, what have you. We said, what if they stripped that? What would we do? We were all like, this would be a sad day, but we could figure it out. It's just going to mean more work, which means the smaller brands are going to be more behind because they're not going to have the resources or the money or the time to get it right. But yeah, no, it seems like it's an easy target to say, hey, you're being tracked online. There's ways that are totally I don't support. I don't want someone secretly following me all over the web for whatever they want to do. I don't like that. That's not how we track. We can get a little bit into how we track. I don't know if we'll get as, I don't know how deep we'll get into it or not, but I've never liked that. We've always been on the first party side, which is just pretty much because it's the best signal. Like if you're deducing someone's entire browsing history and then trying to determine and infer what you think they were trying to do, that is tougher to do. And now it's a lot tougher to actually get that data. So I always like the strongest signals because we dealt with busy, smallish brands, smallish meaning at the time when we first got started 1 to 10 million in revenue. Now they're a little bit bigger in some cases for sure. And they didn't have time to look at 100 touch points and try and, or some convoluted model. They just, what am I supposed to do? So we're always just, at the end of the day, we need to give you advice that you're going to act on, and then it's going to be for your benefit. And if we can't do that, who cares how fancy all our models are and our stats and what we track and don't track? Long-winded answer is saying, yeah, it's tough. The barrier entry is only going to be tougher for anyone else coming in because we've been doing this a long time. And there's a lot to take into account because you could have the perfect tracking based on whatever technology you're allowed. But then if people, they still don't know what the hell to do with it. That's the big challenge, Mike.
It feels like what brands really want to know is, okay, if I spend $100 in advertising and I split that $20 here, $20 there, and I split it all over the show across 5 different channels, how do I know which one of those $20 bills is working the hardest for me? And that's what brands really want to know at the end of the day. Or I'm not necessarily going to can the channel that isn't working the hardest for me, but at least I know then, okay, this is my expected ROI on this channel versus this channel. Doesn't mean I'm gonna can all the channels except for the one that's performing the best, because there will be certain cohorts of customers that live primarily in one channel versus another. And so from an acquisition perspective, you will be able to go out and court customers in certain places that you won't be able to court them in others. So that makes sense. But at least if we can better quantify how hard our money is actually working for us, whether we're getting more money back than we're spending, then I think it allows us to make better informed marketing spend decisions, particularly in performance marketing. Because let's face it, that's primarily where yes, sure, obviously you're going to be tracking performance of SEO and organic as well. But really, when we're thinking about spending a cold, hard dollar of cash on a performance marketing channel, we want to know that we're going to get at least that back in return. But a lot of brands, they don't take into account, and I'd love your initial thoughts on this piece. They might know what it costs to acquire a customer versus spending a dollar. So if they say, okay, I spend a dollar, I'm gonna acquire X number of customers, or I'm gonna have to spend X number of dollars to acquire X number of customers. So they know what their customer acquisition cost is by that channel, but they don't necessarily know what the ROI on that spend is if they don't take into account some other factors, i.e., what is their average margin on their sales? So what is their unit economics look like? What is their cost to service? What is their average returns and returns cost, both at a channel and a customer level? So I see a lot of brands, they might know roughly what they spend on a given channel to acquire a customer, but that doesn't necessarily allow them to directly correlate that with ROI of acquisitions through that channel, because they're not looking at all the data points. They're looking at only one data point. So how do you help merchants better understand, okay, there's attribution in terms of acquisition, but there's a whole lot more to it than that to know whether you're profitable in that channel or not?
Oh, yeah. One of our longest customers just got on me a week ago because they were trying to find out how do we, they've finally deduced the best thing that drives top of the funnel return on ad spend is repeat customer count. And by its definition, top of the funnel is you're not a customer yet if you've done your segmentation. But they've noticed, oh, hey, if we get them to buy more than one time, then because we have lifetime tracking, that drives the ROAS up. And therefore, and I go, yeah. So a lot of it is the people will point to CAC a lot of times because it's or MER. And those are the two easiest, particularly MER. Everyone likes doing MER because it's the least amount of effort. What's the spend? What's the revenue? Great, MER.
Yeah.
Going up. And it's true, as long as it's going up, people are generally happy. So it's a fine proxy metric just for your North Star. Am I doing better than I was? But for me, the big opportunity is lifetime value or some agreed upon value further in time, how that impacts things. Because our most savvy user I've seen was a subscription brand for supplements, and they would increase ad spend almost to as much as they could spend on a Facebook ad set if their top of the funnel ROI or their ROAS got to 0.8, meaning they were still losing money, but they knew because of how many recurs they were going to get in the future, and that those ad sets wouldn't look profitable to their competition. Because if you're using Facebook Ad Manager, you get the 7-day click, and these people were like 2 to 3 weeks to convert. Then they convert on a trial. Then really 45 days out or whatever it is, then their billing starts, and then they can retain them for 6 months. So they had a whole holistic data strategy of retention, just average order value, but average value 3 to 6 months out. And so they would manage their spend based on just the trend was headed profitable because they knew their back end unit economics was so tight, they're recurring. Let's just say simple example. Yeah. So you'll say you go and you see your CAC's $100. You say, oh no, I need a $50 CAC. I want to turn this off. But lo and behold, those $100 customers all are going to repeat 6 times. So they're all worth $600 a pop. You should actually be spending with both hands there, given you have the resources. And so it's really coming down to, the people that understand the customer journey. So they're spending top, middle, and bottom of the funnel and measuring those differently. And then the lifetime value on the back end can greatly impact strategy. And then it's not going to match the ad managers because they're just built for near real-time conversion. There's ways you can be sophisticated with them, but I've been out there many times talking to the engineers behind it, and we wanted to push lifetime value in, and they said they want a sale within an hour. They go the timestamp within an hour into the Facebook pixel for it to optimize best. I'm like, but that sale took 10 days. The hell should it matter? And they're like, it matters. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Fascinated me. They don't even at Facebook themselves, which is such a great driver of long-time lifetime value, nurturing in the funnel, and the algorithms are generally optimized for just revenue and finding more of those people at the very bottom. So
That are going to convert immediately, basically.
So the edge is when you can look elsewhere where people don't even understand or aren't even thinking there, like Gretzky skating where the puck wasn't. I don't know if you play hockey or not.
Yeah, no, but I'm familiar with that term. Skate where the puck is going, not where it is.
This whole top and middle, people don't understand, or it takes thinking and a different way of looking at things. People don't is excited about doing that. But when the brands that are doing it are making a lot of money. So I suggest people look at it.
And I think you point out something really crucial here, which is that most performance marketing managers, whether it's outsourced or whether by a brand or whether they've got an in-house performance marketing manager, they are looking at CAC payback within the first purchase. But even that is a flawed model because you're never 100% profitable on a sale. So they'll say if we spend $100 to acquire a customer and in the first purchase they spend $100 with us, then that's cool. We've got our CAC paid back. No, you don't. Because if you've got a 50% profit margin, you only made $50 on that sale. You didn't make $100, but you spent a real genuine whole $100 to acquire the customer. So even in that model, it's wrong. It's not accurate because you're not 100% net margin, right? Your net margin might only be 50%, or your net margin might only be 20% or 30%. And so the whole model of justifying ad spend seems so hopelessly broken. It's difficult to even have a realistic and logical discussion about attribution or about modeling or about forecasting or about lifetime value. And then the other thing I see, and I love your comment on this next, is when we look at LTV, or when we try to calculate when a customer has become churned and therefore we no longer really calculate their LTV because they've actually churned out of the business, a lot of businesses actually have no idea how to calculate when a customer has churned or when they're still active within the business. And I like to say, look, let's keep it simple. There's some very complex modeling tools out there to help you calculate your LTV, or when you should start calculating LTV versus a churned customer, churn versus active. And I like to think, look, as long as a customer has bought at least 2 times from you, then you know what the average purchasing frequency is. And if you take that entire cohort across your entire customer base, so if you look at every single customer in your business that has bought at least 2 times, and then you take the average purchase frequency across all of that cohort of customers, then you have your average repurchase frequency, right? Because obviously, if you're selling supplements, your average repurchase frequency is going to be totally different than if you sell bloody mattresses, because it's not, you're talking about a consumable product versus a non-consumable product. So using a standard calculation like 12 months to consider somebody churned as a customer doesn't work for every brand, because every brand is different and the catalog composition is different. And some brands will have a mixture of consumables and a mixture of non-consumables. And so you need to look at it quite uniquely for your business when you consider somebody churned, when you're looking at LTV calculations. And so I think that a lot of brands, they use standard metrics, out of the box metrics in all sorts of tools. And unless they customize those calculations for their business based on the actual behavior of their customers, that those metrics aren't going to mean a damn thing to them.
So this really hits home because we had this killer AI enabled analysis tool that I thought we were about ready to release. And we were thrilled how it would mine all the data. It would run the processes. It was really not advanced. I'd call it just artificial, meaning it would run on demand the things that we always wish people would see in the data. Because our analysts get on there, whiz bang, wow people. And then we have people that obviously pay us. So we have a growing business. But the big market is the people that aren't quite there. They don't have 2 hours to go do this deep analysis that I would prefer to do, which I don't get to do now running the company. And so we got it all cooked up. We're all excited. And we're in the middle of our alpha where we're running it manually, presenting it to the people, then tweaking our analysis based on what we hear. And everyone needed something custom. I'm like, literally, should we just become a custom attribution? Because we have a lot of customization in there, a ton of it. I was like, should we just become a custom optimization wizard? That's why the market still exists, come to find out, because we have this whole cross section of people, some too small probably to even use attribution, and some that are 100 million a month revenue. They're all over the place. So we see a lot of cross section of budget, complexity, skill,
Yeah.
desire to be in the data or not. People love to be in the data. They love us. And if they don't, then they're like standoffish forever. And so and it's just hit me recently. I talked to product manager this week. Like, do we just we have to allow, because we're going to roll out just our rules because we know what we're doing, which we think we do. Everyone was like, but then this and this, I'm not going to use
Our
this.
business is a little unique and we've got these service channels. And so that affects our unit economics. And
yeah, oh, to your point. Yeah. Oh, my ROAS has to be 2.5 for me to even break even. Like our poster boy with all our data, the guy selling lobster from back when I got into it, we still use his data for examples. Yeah, he basically is like 30%. So if he makes 2 ROAS, he's like, I can't live off this.
yeah, it's not sustainable.
Can I get 5 or 6? And then he's like excited. And so the customization really matters, particularly buying cycle, how long people take. The higher the price point or the more consideration, the more you need to understand top and middle of the funnel. You're selling a toothbrush. Yeah, it's all just try and get them to buy.
Yeah.
You probably just use the Facebook stats because you're just trying to get people to buy a really cheap thing as fast as you can. And same with Google. You wouldn't really need it in there. It's just like click and buy. but most things aren't click and buy. So that's when, yeah, it's super custom. And then LTV, if someone's LTV is a couple years of reason, they're not willing to, because then someone said, oh, I got an LTV calc. It's 8 grand. Yeah, that's over your 10 years of history. The first year, they only spend $400. You
Yeah.
really want to, you're going to take it. We got a $2,000 CAC and say, hey, we're making you 4 to 1. Yeah, in 10 years. You're going to be working here in 10 years.
Yeah, the ROI, if your ROI is 10 years, is that going to work for you? No, no, it's not. You might not even be in business in 10 years.
Yeah, so you got to find out, and it really is it's more subjective than scientific. It should be scientific, but it's really subjective based on the media buyer's job security, what the brand owner thinks or is up for considering. And it's always, I don't try to go more than 90-day. I do a cohort, different parameters, and then do 90-day value, because they can try anything for a quarter. Anyone can say, all right, I'll try this approach for 90 days. But no one's willing to it's very rare someone will do a more than 90-day payback.
Yeah.
So you've got to show that they're profitable, or that with that supplement company, the compound effect of all of these was just insane how much they ended up making. But they just had the guts and the budget to do that, where
Hmm.
they were only going to really be profitable probably going into month 3 or late month 2. And then, but after they stacked up enough months of that,
Then it was rolling.
then every cohort, that's where it's all just found money. That's the dream of SaaS, not SaaS, but subscription. They
Yeah.
had that dream, and it was nice to see.
So they were willing to front load all those costs basically, and willing to eat all the front loaded costs to get into that cycle, the buying cycle with the customer, and get embedded into their behavior and modify their behavior. Because I guess, you probably know this better than me, but most of the stats out there say that still, no matter how good your retention model is, no matter how good and strong your brand is, the vast majority of online stores, they get to a maximum of about 20% to maximum 30% returning customer rate. So that means that 70 to 80% of their customers will only ever buy off of them once, unless they have a subscription model, a consumer product, etc. That is pretty scary for most brands to contemplate in today's day and age, where performance marketing is so bloody expensive.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that dire. I guess
Yeah.
I just hadn't thought about it recently. Man, yeah. And plus the fact that it takes Google posts their case studies on them a year ago about the touch points to do different purchases. And someone to buy $100 pair of headphones, it was like 140 touch points. And then someone from cosmetics was like 80 touch points to buy, like, I don't know, makeup kit or something. And I was like, oh my God, if you were paying for every one of those, no one can pay for 80 touch points to sell something for 80 bucks.
You'd be bankrupt before you sold a mascara.
The people will get on and be like, I want to count everything equally. And I go, okay, let's pretend to take 100 touch points. And you sell something for $100. If we count everything for $1, nothing's ever going to look profitable. So you won't spend anywhere, and then you'll slowly go out of business, or fast go out of business. I was like, so our job is to give you the directional guidance that you spend on, based on a weighting that ultimately drives you more efficient ad spend or more volume, one or the other, based on what you need. And so that can be challenging to determine which clicks you're going to weight right or incorrectly. So I try to do the highest signal or the most impactful. Like the first time someone joins someone's CRM, you're willing to opt in. I try to keep zero inbox, so I'm more hardcore than most, but I'm like, oh no, putting in my email address. I'm going to see it on all my websites now. I'm going to see it in Facebook, see it on Instagram, get emails. Like they're going to try to text me. It's a big commitment marketing wise. So I always find that's a big top of the funnel. I like to define that as going from the top to the middle, is when you're willing, and not every business model fits that, but you can capture the email address for the first time. That's worth spending money, time, and attention and analysis on, because that's what's ultimately driving the downstream revenue in a lot of business models, is them first agreeing to get all this extra marketing from you. So that's how we first figured out the lobster guys thing in like 2014. He's like selling 6 lobster tails, buy 6, get 6 free, which he still runs. And he gets bored with it. I'm like, it still prints money. And you have them opt in, get the special buy 6, get 6 teal. And he just redirect them to the page that had the
Yeah.
buy 6, get. And he's like,
Wow.
well, how are they going to know? And I was like, you tell me if 5 people email and complain and what they would actually complain about. You brought their attention to what was on your site. No one's ever said a word. Hundreds of thousands of leads later. And boom,
Wow.
tons of money. Just e-com redirect to your best product offer.
Wow. And I think, I think you, sorry to interrupt you. I think you raise a really good point, which is that, you're not a CDP. So Wicked Reports, as far as I'm aware, is not a CDP. It's a data analytics platform, really. And it's an attribution platform for marketing spend, both or obviously organic, paid, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you marry that with the idea that brands now need to much better capture and manage their zero and first party data? I guess, first of all, I have my own definition of it, but maybe you can speak to the difference between zero and first party data for a start off. And then two, the fact that you guys are an attribution platform, not a customer data platform. And 9 times out of 10, the zero and first party data needs to go into either a marketing automation platform at a bare minimum, but ideally into a customer data platform that can do lots more of analysis and segmentation and cohort data work than a standard marketing automation tool can do. But then we also need to share that data with you, and you need to share your data back with the CDP as well. It needs to be a two-way flow of data for you to be fully informed and for them to be fully informed. So I guess first, maybe speak a little bit to this whole concept of zero and first party data, why it's so important. And then secondarily, how you guys start to think about how you gather and utilize zero and first party data in Wicked Reports.
Yeah, so we were built originally on Infusionsoft, now called Keep, and it was based on the data. We'd pull the data out of there, and that was the only conversions we allowed. Now we got more. We're like, if we can't prove it, we won't report it.
Okay.
At the time, the pixels were, I mean, they've had all their ups and downs with accuracy, but it was 30-day view. Facebook take credit for basically, if you had a Facebook plus Google alone, it would overcount what your actual sales were because they'd all take credit for everything.
So you'd have 2 or 3 companies taking credit for the same bloody conversion.
The more channels you added, it got more and more compounded. Because then you look in your email system, every email generated it. Then you go to Google Analytics and direct took everything. And a lot of people used to have checkouts that are on different domains that added all this complexity as well. And so I looked at it and I was like, I'll start from the actual proof, which is we'll pull the sales out of wherever you have them. In this case, Infusionsoft was our first integration. Now we have, I don't know, like 20 of them or something. And then first CRM, and we'll get those points on this like identity graph, if you will, or this timeline of a person. And then we'll fill in around that with all the things we see happen on your owned properties, meaning inbound clicks that we can figure out or deduce who they are and create a timeline. And then whenever something new appears, new click or consumption and that you triggered from the CRM, people send us all these custom event things based on whatever. Salesman talked to someone,
all these behaviors, right?
Someone went into this visit to get Botox or something, and it'll insert in, and then we'll recalibrate all the ROAS or conversion costs per that conversion because there's more that showed up or whatever. But we started that way from the beginning because the pixels were so bad. I was like, if I just create another one that fires and says a sale happened, I want to be just like them. So
And I'll be making the problem even worse.
So all of ours, if we say, hey, you've made 80 sales off this, whatever it is, keyword, search keyword, you click it. If you have access to their first party data, we have different access levels, but if you have access to that brand's data, we'll show the order IDs in the people, or we'll mask the people if it's depending on the sensitivity of where they live or whatever. And then you can click on that record and you can see the whole, everything that we have on them. So in one case, we're accurate we're the most transparent. We'll show you all because it's all your data. We didn't go secretly grab them when they weren't on your site. We're not reporting it, and we're not following them. They leave your site. We don't follow them after that. So that's how we sleep at night. And so that's how I approached it. Where at the time it was called first party data, and no one knew what that meant though. So we just say we use your real data.
Yeah. Your transactional data.
CRM.
Your transactional data.
Also, it was the best proxy for whether traffic was cold or hot because you got all this murky pixel data. People say I segmented the data; it's all cold. And then we report something, and they say you got a bug, Joe Schmo, blah blah blah. We go in and be like, no, they're a repeat customer, so we didn't put but this ad set's supposed to be top of the funnel. I'd be like, I don't know what to tell you. This person's been buying from me for 2 years, and they clicked on it. Here's the URL. Here's the landing page. Here's the ad. We'd show them all the stuff. And that's when we started thinking, how are we going to guide our clients the best? And that's why I like having the CRM data, because if you're already in the CRM, you're aware of the brand. You can't, that any interaction they have, that's not someone cold or top of the funnel.
No, They're somewhere
We're
else
trying
in
to
the
match
funnel, even if they haven't purchased.
Yeah. So match the message to the market. And you're like, geez, why did this work so well? And then it didn't work well this time. Were they brand new to the brand? Because they react differently than if they've already seen you offer the same damn discount 85 times. They're blind to it. You got to try something new. And everyone
Yeah.
agrees with the concept, but we're like, how are we going to make attribution data do that? And that's what we chose because it was the best quality data I had.
So how do you link then? Because obviously Facebook is not telling you Bob Jones clicked this ad, and then that follows through, and then I can correlate that if they clicked on that ad on day one, and then they follow that through to my website on day one, and they don't have an account with me yet, so they haven't authenticated. I don't know that it's Bob Jones that's landed on my website. And then if a week later they do come back to my website and they convert because they found me through that Facebook ad, and they create an account, they convert, they make a purchase. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is very tenuous, as I perceive it to be, but I don't work in your space, a very tenuous linkage between customer A, because we don't know their name yet. They're just customer A to us that's clicked an ad, they've come through, maybe they've converted, but how do we then follow that through? Is it because we then effectively have an ID associated with that customer? And so they might not be known to us. They have an ID, they got a number, they're only known by their number until they convert with us, and then we can tie that together with the account that they actually
Then you go
convert
back in
under.
time.
Oh, okay, and then you work it. Okay, so
I go back in time. So you got to store all this actually useless data that you hope becomes useful.
okay,
Scale it all. I gotta say, hey, wait a minute, I have something new. And then now that I have something, I know something new about a particular click or an identity in a CRM. I can go track back and maybe deduce what they were doing before we know about them. Worst case, we're only going to know right when they converted to the CRM, and that may mean we missed a couple touch points ahead of time, and it may not. Sometimes we can go way back in time. Sometimes we can only go back a couple days. It really depends on all sorts of things: browser settings, device, how cross device-ish they were. The more videos at the very top of the funnel, the more challenging it is, because it's likely they were on YouTube a little bit before they raised their hand to you, and those that they viewed on their phone 10 days ago, and then they view on their phone again 2 days ago and decide to click and opt into some offer. Are we going to know that real first video? We're not going to. At that case, we're going to know the one that was layered with the CTA. So it's an imperfect, 100% accuracy is not possible, in my opinion, because of particularly top of the funnel views are like, there's no actual way you can know unless Google tells you. There's just no way you can be secretly looking on YouTube to see, although they did used to sell it to one company, but they stopped doing it. That was like way back. And I
wow.
found out, and I was always on them. I was like, I want that view data. And they were like, no way. Some guy made a deal, it's expiring, and now it's no longer there anymore. But
So they used to literally make available the email addresses of the people that made those views.
they did something. It was a long time ago. It was some company that was and they're not, I think they got acquired, but they no longer have that access to that data set. This was the Wild West of 2013 or 14.
Hey team, I get messages all the time saying, Jason, I really love your content, loving the podcast, loving everything you're doing for the community, but I want to learn more. I want to dig deeper. I want to get better at this e-commerce thing. Well, luckily, my good friend, Michael Vax from Commerce is Digital has come out with a solution for exactly these situations. He has come out with training courses for B2B commerce, B2C commerce, and AI and commerce. Michael knows his stuff. He's been in the game for decades. He's worked across brands as well as platform vendors. He really knows his stuff. He has been so generous to offer eCommerce Edge listeners a 10% discount when you follow my link from the show notes to his courses. I'll put the links to the B2B, B2C, and AI commerce courses in the notes. Follow that through, sign up for his courses, and get upskilled on e-commerce today. Wow. Because obviously in a perfect world, it would be great if all these companies sent the email addresses with when somebody followed through and it fired the pixel, then they know who the person is. They've got all the zero. They've got all the zero and first party data. So if they could allow us to correlate that directly with the purchase via the unique identifier, which is the bloody email address, then we'd all be happy. And so would actually the customer. And this brings me to my next point that I'd love your feedback on. which is that most people out there, actually, my position is that most people don't give a damn about privacy. They say they do, but their behavior tells me otherwise. The fact that they're willing to opt in for SMSs, the fact that they're willing to wear a tracker in their pocket and next to their head 24/7 tells me that people don't give a shit about privacy. The fact that they're willing to use they're willing to use, including me, that they're willing to use their thumbprint or their bloody iris scan or their face scan to log into things which can be compromised. And the reality is that people, what they say and what they do is very different. And so this whole play for privacy, this what I consider a red herring of privacy by Google and Facebook and Apple, is just to reinforce their walled gardens of zero and first party data they've amassed over decades, and they consider it their data. They don't consider it the customer's data. They consider it their data. And so they're going to use that monopoly power over that zero and first party data as much as they can. But my position is the end consumer who has chosen to give that data to Apple and Google and Facebook, 9 times out of 10, if they've clicked an ad, they actually want you to know that they've clicked that ad. They want to have their experience tailored based on the fact that they clicked that bloody ad. And if you knew who they were exactly based on that email address being shunted through the entire value exchange process, so that you could link it through to an account creation process, to a transaction. If you could link all that end to end and you would knew exactly which clicks generated a transaction for that consumer, then you could incentivize them far better because you'd know exactly who it was. So you could make a better offer, a more tailored offer, and you would then be much, much happier to pay Facebook and Google and Apple. But the thing is, actually, I think they benefit from it being quite murky.
You mentioned it briefly on the panel, and then we moved on to another topic because I couldn't agree more. Plus, because I've dealt with Google and Facebook, very nice people, but like the processes and what they're doing is around maximizing their revenue. And that's literally the one North Star that they have. When Apple keeps talking about how private it just drives me bananas because I'm like, no, they're using all the data.
Yeah, they're just not sharing it with anybody else.
Exactly. It's maddening. We had, and then we had this really cool product with Google based on search where if we were reporting high return, it was ROI, you could increase your ad spend because if you didn't have all the impression share. The idea being if your ads are doing great already and you're not showing all the time, that's the most rock solid way, the most comfortable I'd ever be about spend more. You literally just aren't showing to places you're printing money.
Yeah.
Show it all the time.
Yeah.
So we had this nice slider and it would be a ratio based on their return on ad spend and all this. So we could project the revenue quite nice. And they were like, why can you drag it to the left? I'm like, they see a negative, then we want them to be able to lower the ad spend. Like, can you take that out? Straight face. They wanted the possibility to lower the ad spend. This is a wicked smart person that I'm friends with too. And I was like, what are you talking about? If they're not making any money, they got to be able to lower it. And they're like, oh, I don't like that.
That's not good. That's not good for my stats.
And she's wonderful too to work with, but it was so hilarious. I still would tease her about it. I'd be like, that's ridiculous. And every ad ever running in Google is going to hit out of the park. So no, I was like, okay, we got to be able to report that and let them say, turn it off. I don't like it.
We want them spending everywhere we possibly can, and we want to prompt them in the right way psychologically to say, maybe you just need to spend more on those, and then they'll do better. It's crazy. And the negative keywords and everything else, they try to encourage you not use negative keywords. And if you use Google's recommendations across the ad sets, you're going to lose your backside, basically. If you just blindly trust them and don't use any software like yours or some other software to help you track the performance of your Google ads, you're going to get taken to the cleaners by Google.
Yeah. I mean, that spending on brand, like, oh, you got to protect your brand. They're already coming for me. Such a tough, then you see a competitor's bidding right above you though. And you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
It's such a racket on brand names alone, but it's frustrating.
What a game. Now let's talk a little bit more about Wicked Reports. We've talked about some of the challenges. We've talked about some of the changes in the industry. We've talked about some of the hype. We've talked about the need to collect zero and first party data. So I think that let's just round out the conversation around zero and first party data. Then we'll get into Wicked Reports and how this helps brands to deal with some of these challenges and why you built Wicked Reports in the first place. But I think when we think about zero and first party data, we can think about explicitly provided data. So in other words, preference data. Let's say you sell hair care products or hair coloring products, and you have a quiz in there where you say, okay, what's your complexion? what's your hair type, what's your hair composition, what's your natural hair color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What color would you like it to be? What are you trying to achieve with your hair today? And then it spits out a whole bunch of product recommendations. All those preferences and data that you manually put in there, that's zero-party data. That's the very best data that you can get from a customer, because they've explicitly told you, they've told you their birth date, they've told you their gender, they've told you whatever it is they've told you by choice and voluntarily given you information about them and their preferences and their wants, needs, and desires. Then that is like the gold standard, right? Then we have first-party data, which is inferred data. So we can track behavior across a website. We know that they went to the homepage. We know which categories they went to. We know which product pages they went to. We know which products they added to their cart. We know which products they added to their wish list. We know which products they abandoned. We know which products they purchased. We know a whole bunch of inferred information about them. We know that 85% of the time they buy a size 8. It's pretty certain that they're probably a size 8. If 85% of the time they buy red, it's probably a pretty good signal they like red products, right? So that's first party data. Zero party data is even better, but those two cohorts of data alone are so informative for a brand if they capture it first off, if they operationalize it both as part of their marketing, new product development, merchandising, personalization on the website, if they actually utilize that data in meaningful ways to create a better experience for the customer, absolute gold, absolute gold. And most brands aren't even doing that. Now, assuming they do all that, then they still need to deal with this attribution problem. They still need to understand, if I spend $1 here, there, and everywhere, which dollar is working the hardest for me, or at least is working the best for my customers, because they're actually converting off those dollars that I spend. And that, as I understand it, is where Wicked Reports comes in. It can leverage the data coming from the platforms. It can leverage the data coming from a customer behavior, and it ties those two together so that it helps you understand where your dollar is working the best for you. So take over from there and correct me where I've gone wrong.
No, it was very eloquent. I might have to just put that on the website. That was nice. No, so we have the zero party data and the first party. And then for third party, we use the ad platforms, either ad spend or we pull in some of their metrics because you can compare us versus them. Ideally, we're going to diverge and track more. That's not always the case, but usually track more sales, meaning we'll track more than them, but hopefully we track more sales. Whenever we don't, people don't like the numbers. The numbers aren't good.
Yeah.
Facebook says they want whatever's going to show the most sales.
Yes.
I could just add 100 to each call.
Like they do.
Yeah. They're all closing on email and SMS, not on Facebook. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. So where we like to, the cross-channel journey is something that it's complicated because you got to have all your ducks in a row on what you mentioned. And then you've got to be strategic with your ad spend, either around CAC or LTV or ROAS, payback period. And then there's the funnel, how you talking to the top, middle, and bottom. So there's a lot of complexity. And we've worked slowly over time, fast in some cases, slow in some, to make it more and more digestible, understandable, actionable. And then I noticed when I finally got to where I liked all the data points in our particular, we have one particular report called Funnel Vision, kind of auto segments the click based on where it was in your first party data at the time of the click. So if you clicked on Facebook and you weren't in any first party data, then you're top of the funnel. If you're in first party data, you're middle or bottom based on a customizable bunch of settings. You can change your time windows, your look back windows, or your other settings to do that. And so when I got it all in there and I was all giddy about all the analysis we could do, I was like, wait a minute, it's 50 columns. And then let's just say you have, I don't know, 10 campaigns running with 4 targets each, and then 6 ads, because we do ad level to CRM ID to cart ID to click ID. And I'm like, you're looking at a few thousand pieces of points for one. And then you got to do the trend. Each one of those points has a trend. And I was like, I was so excited and so deflated because I'm like, oh no, I finally have everything in there the way I like it. And if I'm not on there doing the analysis, what the fuck are they going to do?
Because they don't have a data scientist 9 times out of 10 working for them. So what are they going to do with all this data?
They're just going to do it based on the simplest metric. They're going to do MER, or they're going to do the CAC, but not look at the funnel, or just look at the ROAS. The ROAS, that's good news, ROAS, bad news. And that's okay, but that's like bare minimum table stakes now, which that is helpful. And so with the AI stuff, we didn't rush something out. We rushing because everyone rushed out their crappy chatbot. And one of our competitors put one out and then pulled it after a while, because when they showed the ad too with the chatbot, I was like, ooh, that's pretty cool. I was like, but you gotta know what to type in. But if you know what to type in, that seems pretty cool. And they ended up pulling it, probably because we found it was really challenging for people to know what to ask, or if they
Because you got to be a
ask,
prompt engineer to get a good result.
yeah, you need a ton of guardrails
Yeah.
because it's going to answer based on what it's looking at. And if they haven't picked the right parameters, they're the wrong stuff. So I'm like, oh my God, it never ends how much training we're going to have to give to get people at the right level to really be our rabid users that we have. And so that's where AI has started to work for us we're in alpha right now. We'll go to beta end of Q3 here. So when the time this app's out, we'll be in beta, where it's going to synthesize all the data for you in a number of ways. And the way it helped them most was customer journey, because you got to first usually analyze how's this doing at let's just say first click, last click for a simple example. Where they first click on to buy, to become a customer, or where they last click on. And there's all kinds of cool stuff just from that. But then you've got to still do a lot of thinking. All right, where's the top of the funnel measurement that I would like? And then, okay, what's the ROAS? Oh, wait, the ROAS doesn't look that great. It's top of the funnel. It's not going to be as good as your brand campaign. That's for
No.
sure. There's different benchmarks you need to use.
Hmm.
And it's usually based on how you look at how you average do at top of the funnel. And then the ones that are better than average, even if they're lower than your middle bottom, that's good because that's what's fueling them. And so we used it to very promising, where like we can show someone, hey, 30% of your sales are direct. And then usually you have a ton of SMS and email. Rather than having to learn how to report it, our AI is just telling you what led to it, so that you'll still spend on that Facebook top of the funnel or your Google longer tail keywords or middle, whatever they are, whatever happens to be over there at Google. We connect those dots in a nice, plain English way. And then you can click in and geek out on the data, which we'd love for you to do, but you don't actually have to. Just tell you, spell it out. So that's the big thing we're doing. The promise of all the data that I listed out all the insights that we had. And it was over 100 things and I showed some people some lists, and they said, we would kill for this. I go, we already have it in there.
But you're not even looking at it. You're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, we got pinned all the analytics, and we're like, oh my God, they're not clicking the right stuff. And what it was, so the two approaches we had was we could just train up these super stuff. We could just do tons of training, which I don't mind doing. We could just do it for you. That some people they're just be basically data analysts for hire. We go in and just analyze it all for you, and then when you're ready, or we could actually, that's where the AI came in handy. We can actually have it done for you, but it's not a human.
Yeah.
You can put all these guardrails on the prompts, and then it can learn on your specific data. So it'll really be custom attribution solution with custom insights based on your inputs of your goals, plus it's what it's learned off your data, off the X amount of time we've learned. So it's going to be really sticky, and it's the end game of all this work is that you actually act on the damn stuff that's in there.
Yeah,
So
because otherwise, why spend all the money and the time and the energy if it's not actionable and you can't, you're not actually do anything off the back of it. If you're only using it to justify what you're already doing, don't get attribution software. Just keep doing what you're doing, and that's what I see a lot of brands doing.
Yeah, and that's a fair amount of the use is just, I just want to make sure it's doing as good as I think. And we're like, the whole point of it is to optimize, not to
Uh, uh,
measure. Measurement's just to help you then determine what to do. That's what we got to get to with everyone. We got people that are doing it, but not as many as should. It should be the whole point of it is I want to optimize based on what my best customers are in there desperately trying to tell me stuff. And we got to mine it. Mine the data for them. So it's a fun spot to be in, that we're finally at that point at scale without a massive multi-year engineering project. It's just more like a 5-month project that we're 4 months into.
And how does something like marketing mix modeling, how do you think about that from a deterministic perspective versus, what you're trying to do, which is you're trying to grab data from as many sources as you possibly can and trying to connect the dots between those data points as realistically and honestly and transparently as you can so that people can make decisions based on those, because the customer journey is not linear nowadays. That's the biggest challenge. If it was linear, then no problem. You wouldn't need attribution software. They click an ad, they come to your website, they convert, they become a repeat customer, you email them, you SMS them, and they continue rebuying off of you, or they go onto a subscription and your job's done. Good job. I'm a marketer. Awesome. Great. But that's not how customers buy today. They might, like you said, they might see or be exposed to your brand or your products or your category in 80 different ways before they actually even consider converting with you. And so because it's this very non-linear journey, and it's digital channels, it's physical channels, it's social, it's all over the show nowadays. And sometimes even the customers themselves don't even remember all the things they did to find you and buy your product. That becomes a real challenge. So how much of this is analytics and how much of this is deterministic and how much of this is model based versus real hard data that you think has a high likelihood of correlation?
I think that over time, you want the high correlation data. And marketing mix modeling helps for the theories of the strategy or the bigger the brand. When you're talking household names or nine-figure brands, marketing mix is much more important because you can't, like I got a Solo stove. I don't even know where I got it, but it was probably word of mouth or some exposure, or like Yeti coolers, things like
Yeah.
that. That's where marketing mix modeling is makes more sense, or doing just incremental lift studies because you can't capture all the viral stuff that's going on. You just can't.
And all around the world and
Couple
different
knows, you know,
markets and different languages and everything. You just can't do it.
yeah. Then the smaller brands, smaller, I'd say the 1 million to 100 million brands can lean more on the cold hard data and actions based on goals and targets that are customized for their unique journeys and needs and budgets. That's where you get, that's where they need more diligence in the data, but have potentially less capacity to do it based on once they get to like 40, 50 mil, then they usually have a full-time data person in, maybe a 20 mil, but a 10 mil doesn't have it and needs it partially the most. But then again, then the owner has to be committed to, or the head of marketing, or they're not going to value it. So it's interesting. I don't know if I answered it fully, but in my opinion, the mix modeling is big. Bigger you
The
are,
big into town.
and if it's too vague, and you're, let's say you're spending 100 grand a month and you're a $10 million business, you're in there and the owner's getting the stats and obsessing over them as well. I've spent all this money on marketing. I bought this damn software. Why isn't it growing? Or is it growing? Great. Let's grow faster. They want to see the tangible results, and the vagueness of the vagueness, but the more strategic marketing mix modeling stuff doesn't satisfy what they're trying to do.
Well, it doesn't satisfy VCs either. And if you're at 10 to 100 million, you've potentially taken on some outside investor money and they want to see, okay, are you just taking money and lighting it on fire in a pile in the corner, or is it actually driving benefits for our business? If we turned off Facebook marketing for the next 30 days, are we actually going to significantly lose sales, or are we just going to save a whole are we going to save 100 grand? Should we, if we really want to know, is it working? Do we just want to turn off Facebook for a month and see if it actually impacts us? And do you ever recommend that to a client? Do you ever recommend, hey, look, here, our data is telling us this, but if you want to prove us right or wrong, turn off Facebook marketing for 30 days and let's see if we're right or you're right.
We tell people when we think they should turn off campaigns. We do. We say turn it off. Like for example, if we do a buyer analysis and every customer buys within average time to first purchase 2 weeks, then they've been running it usually 3 times as long as that, and their ROAS target is modest. You got to make sure they're not trying to pie in the sky. We'll run a couple different analyses, but then we'll tell them turn this off if it's not good. Now we won't ever say challenge on the ROAS one because we usually campaign ad set optimization.
Mhm.
We have recommended, sometimes we've had one person, one or two people that ended up leaving us because they're like, we believe in your data and nothing's working. So, shoot, we don't have marketing services. I go, we had agencies we can recommend that can help with that. That's not our service to go in and
Yeah,
run.
if nothing you're doing is working, we're not creating the ads, we're not creating the campaigns, we're not creating the creative. We can only tell you if it is working or not, but if it isn't, we can't tell you how to fix that.
Correct. So we're getting
It
into
could
the
be your offer, it could be your pricing, it could be your catalog breadth, and that was the other thing I think that this naturally led to. I'm assuming that brands that have significantly larger catalogs working across broader category sets, working across some, maybe they might have some products that lend themselves to things like subscriptions or automatic rebuying or at least automatic prompting through marketing automation or something like that, versus some products not. I guess the more complex their catalog is, the more complex it is for them to really extract the best performance out of their ad spend.
in some case it depends on their strategy. And some, yeah, if they're trying to stitch together, because we have cohort reporting, like what was the first thing bought, show me the LTV. Then okay, what was the second thing bought, how many times did they rebuy, all those other questions, and that's CDP land, or that's still custom because those questions are so different per brand.
Per brand, yeah.
But the bigger catalogs can do really well with attribution because they have so many other things to sell people. The more repeat customers or repeat purchases, the more the need for lifetime value tracking over lifetime and correlating it back, the more that it will differ from the ad platforms you have. The better you are in marketing, the more you'll differ from the ad platforms as well. Probably the more complexity, but also you're trying to sell them 4 to 5 different things over the first 6 months. And then as that happens, by that second purchase, it then uplifts the top of the funnel on the first purchase based on the model you're looking at. So things can become profitable that weren't once your remarketing or your second time purchase campaigns kick in and work. SMS, good email always help. Someone like, so here's another one for you. So I had a guy who's been using WorkForce a long time. I really want live conversion data, which we do have, even though it annoys me because I don't think you should make same day decisions. The
Hmm.
market demanded it, so we built it. And I was like, why? He goes, some days the algorithm's really good to me, so I want to spend more that day. When I see I have more conversions, I go, I'll bet you whatever you want that those are the days you sent a great SMS and email offer and they all bought and then the pixel noticed.
Yeah.
Not it's being good for you. Trust me, Facebook would be good to you every day because you spend more when it's to you. They're
Hmm.
not secretly hiding the good leads from you that day, the good traffic. They're convinced. So I got a couple people that are convinced that some days the algorithm's better. I go, yes, those are the days that they bought something for some reason within the attribution.
Other than following a click from a Facebook ad.
But they think it's that, oh, the clicks that day. And I go, no. I go, you'd have to do 1 day click. And even then it could have been the day before, but still close enough. Like, so that's a common fallacy that people run around propagating. Some days the algorithm is good to me, which that,
Yeah.
and maybe it is good to you that day for some reason. I don't think so though.
And what would we're coming to the end of our time together, and I just so appreciate your time. And look, you've been doing this for a long time, and these stories from the trenches are super valuable to anybody who's maybe not doing any attribution modeling at all nowadays. They might not be using an attribution tool, or maybe they're using, I don't know, maybe they're using Triple Whale, they're using Northbeam. It feels like there's a new attribution platform launched every bloody day. It feels like if you go into the Shopify App Store and then you type into attribution, you'll get a 200 results. So it's a bit ridiculous out there. If somebody's not really got attribution nailed at all, or they're not even thinking about it outside of the ad platforms themselves and their direct data, and maybe they're plumbing that data directly into some sort of custom BI tool that they've built out in Power BI or something. If they're not doing that today and they're 20, let's say they're a 20 to a $50 million a year GMV brand, and they really don't have a handle on attribution today, where do you suggest? Obviously, they can go and check out Wicked Reports and all that, but where should they really start from a thinking and mindset perspective internally in the business before they start considering tools and hiring people and all those things? Where do you think most brands should actually start to get in the right space to even be able to start leveraging all this amazing technology that's out there like Wicked Reports?
Yeah, we get to start with the end in mind. What are the business outcomes? What's the whole point of the project? Because you could take any one of those solutions, get it set up, and then you're still staring at it and you just have more data to look at. And if you don't have a game plan for what you're going to do, you're not any better. You just spend a lot of time
And
pumping
money.
data somewhere else and getting it accurate, getting on calls, combing around aimlessly. You need a game plan of what outcomes you're trying to solve. That starts because then you'll start looking at your existing data and then you'll notice the gaps. That's big. That's where I would start because it always starts with the plan. And if you just go off and get it because you're like, I don't understand what to do with my ad spend. If you like, when you take that next step, then okay, what metrics are you going to use? What are the targets? Why are your existing data sources not good? Because undoubtedly you got all kinds of piles of data telling you all sorts of things, and then which may or may not be the truth, and it may not be their fault. They may be built for different reasons, and you're trying to use them for the wrong reason. Like Facebook Ad Manager or Google, a lot of those are looking at what made someone finally buy at the end of a complex journey, or even if it's a simple journey. There still was probably not, oh my God, your offer is amazing, I'm going to buy right away. That does happen, but less likely.
It's the exception, not the rule.
Every first time they see an ad, they click and buy that compelled. It's possible. It does happen, but it's not 100% of your journey for sure.
And if they don't have a plan and they don't know how to formulate a plan, is that something that you guys help your merchants with?
Yeah, because we need targets in order to, now with this new done for you analysis, We need to know the thought process behind what the goal of a specific channel and campaign are, and then how you're to you means success.
Success. Yeah. Because otherwise, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time.
Yeah, which is different based on repeat purchase count, LTV, 90-day LTV, how fast your customers normally buy, and your model. So if you're doing, we had some companies that are doing using ads to drive online bookings to then have an in-person consultation that might lead to massive amount of money. And so that's a very specific setup and analysis steps versus if you're just selling widgets online with a Shopify store, it's very different. So we got to understand the model of what you're trying to accomplish with your ads and help you measure it.
So you got to understand the unit economics first of whatever it is that they're selling. That's, I guess, where it really starts.
Economics and the whole model and your historical conversion rates per step. And we know what we're looking at is good or bad once you have real measurement in place. It can help you go forward. Just if you're doing a diet, you want an expert, just like if you're doing think about all the different ways to work out. If I'm trying to get in shape and I'm going to kayak on the ocean, doesn't mean I wander in a CrossFit gym and ask them what to do. I got to learn how to kayak better. The kayak store, ask for a kayak guy. So it's very specialized based on what you're trying to accomplish.
Makes complete sense. And we're now at the time in the podcast where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you, and you get to ask me one question, any question you like, personal, professional, whatever you like. So, Scott from Wicked Reports, what is your question for me today?
What was the most eye-opening transformation you've seen with one of your clients? What was the most aha thing they gained from data?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think that I was working with a client in Ireland, and they were sitting on an absolute mountain of zero and first party data. They work in the waste disposal space, but they productize their services in such a way that you basically buy it like an e-commerce journey. So you buy it like an e-commerce product. And so they were sitting on a mountain of data. They didn't have a marketing automation platform before I got there. They were actually re-platforming, and they were moving off Shopify into another platform because they needed to be able to do B2B, B2C, D2C. They needed to be able to do the whole 9 yards, and they needed to be able to control their customer journey better. And they had really complex products serviced by multiple backend systems that were operational systems. Basically, they had 3 different ERPs and just really challenging stuff. But as a result, they were sitting on an absolute mountain of data. And as part of the replatform project, we did some demos with 2 or 3 CDP systems. They ended up going with MAP because it's GDPR compliant and it's based in the UK, and so therefore it was a great fit for them. But I think where they started to be able to, even from day one in MAP, they started to be able to quantify who their most valuable customers were and why. So what types of products were they buying? What problems were they solving for that customer? It was really the key thing, right? So they could double down on those services, create new products within that category of services to be able to solve more problems for customers like that. And that was something that they didn't think that the information they were going to get from their zero and first party data would actually influence the types of products that they offered. They thought that it would help them maybe reprice those offerings or maybe drive more traffic to those landing pages for those existing products. They thought it would help them optimize how they were getting more customers for their existing product set. But what it actually did was tell them, okay, cool, if they buy this service first, they will likely then follow up by buying this service, which is so that most of their customers would originate as a single one-off service buyer. But then if they had a good experience, like something like 80% of those customers would turn it into a subscription buyer. So let's say they needed to get rid of some junk out of their garage because they were moving house, and so they would have a man in a van come along and take all the junk away and get rid of it so that they didn't have to think about it anymore. But then when they moved into their new house, they needed a wheelie bin collection, like their weekly wheelie bins. And so what they discovered is if they have a really good experience with us, our man in a van comes out, he helps them clean out the garage and helps them get their stuff in their van, then they're like 80% more likely when they move to their new address to pick up a wheelie bin service from us. And that's a subscription service. And that makes us a whole lot more money. And their LTV becomes massive. Sure, we make a whole ton of money off that man in a van engagement, But what we make over the long term off of a wheelie bin engagement that they might stay with us on average for 4 years, it's way more valuable to us. And the incremental margin is way more valuable to us. But they wouldn't have known that unless they actually started looking at that data outside of their ERPs, right? Because ERPs aren't designed to give you data visualizations like this. They're not designed to crunch it. So unless you export all that data out into some kind of BI tool, you'd never know. You'd never be able to connect those dots together. So I think it's situations like that actually modifies an entire business model and an entire service offering. That to me is a game changer over, oh, I'm going to go spend more on Facebook this month. Sure, you want to make sure that your ad spend on Facebook is performing well for you. But when it completely alters your business model and the way that you think about servicing your customers and tailoring the experience based on that data, to me, that's the bigger game changer.
That's a great one.
And I'm sure you see a lot of the same kind of thing. Let's change our offering. If we know, for example, that 80% of our customers, and this is another key one, there's another key takeaway, and I've seen this with another customer. If we know that 80% of our customers are only ever going to buy off of us once, but we know that with these first purchases, that a huge percentage of the time, these 2 or 3 products are bought together, great. If we know that 80% of the people aren't going to buy off us once, why don't we create a bundle or bundles of several bundles of these different products that are oftentimes purchased together so that we can dramatically increase our AOV on that 80% that we know, okay, no matter what we do, we're going to sit at around 80% are only going to buy off us once. Why don't we create some smarter bundles so that at least our AOV on that 80% is 25% higher than it was last year by smartly looking at our cohort data of people that buy off us more than one time. So I think it's how can we cross-pollinate the data in these smart ways, and how can we leverage this data across the business? And how can we then take that smart data around those purchase frequencies and bundles, et cetera, and how can we give that data, for example, to procurement so that they can go out and they can do better deals with the suppliers of these specific products and say, look, we're going to put you on a bundle with this, but we need better unit economics. So, hey, if we buy more, how can you do a deal with us? How can we cross promote these products together? How can we do unified campaigns? Or maybe how can I worked with a brand before where they would work with their suppliers to supplement their ad campaigns for a certain period of time so that they could run some tests to see what kind of increase in performance they could get out of those products. But if you don't have the data to give them an accurate picture of how those ads performed, then they're really reticent to help subsidize your ad spend. But you would be surprised how many suppliers of retailers are willing to co-spend on advertising if they can draw a really straight line correlation between that spend and increased performance of sales of their products. That there are so many cases where they will co-spend on that because it's going to directly impact their bottom line.
That's a good one. Both of those are cool. I really like that one.
Yeah, look, I think that people just don't think about data as broadly as they could and leveraging it in new ways. So anyways, super cool chatting with you, Scott. Where can people find you? I know, obviously, if they want to find out more about Wicked Reports, and I'll put the link in the show notes, wickedreports.com. Do you prefer people get a hold of you that way or get a hold of you on LinkedIn, email you, carrier pigeon you? How should people get a hold of you?
wickedreports.com or LinkedIn, the two I prefer. So either one of those is great. That'll get one way or another.
Fantastic. Scott, thank you so much for your time. A fantastic conversation. Learned tons. Wish you every success and can't wait to have you on again soon, my friend.
Thanks. It was awesome.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.